Hershey Park, a place with almost as many coasters to ride as it has calories to serve. With a strong connection to the Hershey brand and an even stronger connection to type 2 diabetes, Hershey Park has made a name for itself as a chocolate lover's dream, with giant milkshakes, a chocolate-themed dark ride, and a giant gift shop solely dedicated to testing the impulse control of humans. Brush all of that aside, however, and Hershey Park reveals itself to be a bona fide coaster capital of its own, with 14 roller coasters, all of different styles, eras, and manufacturers. From historic Woodies to brand new B&Ms, Hershey Park has amassed a serious collection of rides for the candy-loving public to enjoy. The overall quality of Hershey Park's collection is really astounding, and it means that the vast majority of rides on property are not only worth the ride, but worth riding again and again and again. But even among a collection as good as this, there's bound to be some winners, and there's bound to be some duds. Milk duds. Candy. Hershey. Laugh, please.
Please clap.
Which is which, you ask? Which are the good and which are the bad? Well, let's take a trip over to Hershey, Pennsylvania and rank them once and for all. This is the top 14 coasters at Hershey Park. Coming in at number 14 in last place, it's SkyRush, an intimate... No, I'm just kidding. Could you imagine though? Seriously, coming in at number 14, it's Coco Cruiser. Coco Cruiser is a kiddie coaster, which, no surprise here, means it's for kids. Young kids. Not kids at heart, but like, actual toddlers. And not only that, it's a Zamperla family gravity coaster, which is one of my least favorite models of kiddie coasters, and an unfortunate sentence that reveals that I've ridden my fair share. The only thing that could save a coaster like this from being the worst coaster in the park is a cool theme, or maybe even a cheeky self-awareness of its own limitations, but Coco Cruiser is unfortunately just plopped on a pot of land and served like a Hershey's Kiss without the wrapper. If there's any coaster you need to skip, or should skip during your visit for the sake of time, I'd recommend it be this one. On to number 13, we have Trailblazer, an aerodynamics mine train. This one really hurts me to rank so low because it's a key component of my personality that I love a good old classic aero mine train. My profoundly fond memories of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which is my favorite aero mine train, are so strong that the love extends even to ones that are objectively bad. Unfortunately for Trailblazer, this has to be maybe the worst mine train I've ever ridden. It's relatively rough, not at all scenic, sparsely themed, and maybe its worst crime of all, undeniably short. There are other aero mine trains that are rough and boring, but at least those are longer than your average YouTube ad. This coaster has been around since 1974, so at the very least you can say a ride on it has some historic value, but other than that, it doesn't really have any other redeeming qualities that make it worth more than a single trip down the trail. Moving on to number 12, it's Sidewinder, a Vekoma boomerang. Let me put my thoughts about this ride into a fun equation for you. Everyone knows math is super fun, so here we go. The amount of enjoyment someone can derive from Sidewinder is equally proportionate to the amount of Vekoma boomerangs they've previously ridden. If X is the number of boomerangs you've ridden and X equals 0, then you might think, hey, yeah, this is a pretty neat ride. If X is greater than or equal to 1, I've got bad news for you. There is nothing special about Sidewinder. I'm not actually sure what it is, if it was a bad seat or a bad train or maybe a bad mental space that I was in, but I thought this was one of the rougher, poorer boomerangs I've ever ridden. There's still some fun to be had here, especially if you enjoy positive G-forces, and boomerangs are sort of a new concept to you, but again, in my mind, this isn't really worth more than a one and done. In the number 11 spot, we have Wild Mouse, a very creatively named mock rides Wild Mouse. I like wild mouses. I've got a whole video about why Wild Mouse coasters are underrated and should continue to be constructed, but at the end of the day, this ride is a dime a dozen. However, it is a good Wild Mouse. The mock rides model is a pretty thrilling one, but there's nothing unique about Hershey Park's Wild Mouse compared to all the other Wild Mouse out there in the wild world. There's some fun speed hills in the layout, and the loading platform is a conveyor belt, which makes entering and exiting the ride pretty dramatic. But aside from that, it's all relatively unremarkable. Some better theming here would have gone a long way, which is why it's relegated to number 11. But still, it is a fun ride that has some re-ride value if the line is particularly short compared to others in the park. At number 10, it's the first Woody on the list, Wildcat, the Great Coasters International build from 1996. Fun fact, Wildcat is GCI's first ever roller coaster, and it shows. It's definitely not a smooth ride, and as far as thrills go, it's definitely lacking in some departments. But you know what? For all the people on the internet who cry, RMC Wildcat, and ask for it to be torn down, I gotta say, it's really not that bad. Actually, I'd argue it's kinda fun. Sure, it's flawed, pretty evidently at that, but at the same time, there are far worse wooden coasters out there in the theme park world that don't nearly get the level of hate that Wildcat does. It is a briskly paced, lateral-filled ride that at the very least will definitely leave an impression on its riders, just maybe in the form of a bruise or two. In my opinion, it's worth the pain. If you hate yourself and have a worrying attraction to violence, Wildcat is the ride for you. Onwards and upwards, at number 9, we have Laff Trakk, a MAURER Rides indoor spinning coaster. Hershey Park aficionados will be quick to tell you that one of Laff Trakk's strongest attributes has nothing to do with its actual layout. On a brutally hot summer day, Laff Trakk is proud to offer a service that no other coaster in the park can offer: air conditioning. That alone is almost enough to elevate the ride into the worth a visit category, but thankfully Laff Trakk is also a pretty fun ride on its own merit. I'm not a huge fan of spinning coasters or anything overly spinny at all for that matter, but Laff Trakk really delivers on its signature thematic elements. It's a glow-in-the-dark indoor coaster that fully commits to its zany, cartoonish aesthetic. And although it can feel a bit generic, it still offers a nice change of pace from the otherwise unthemed coasters it's surrounded by. As a classic theme park fan, the Fun House theme never really fails to get a positive reaction out of me, and Laff Trakk is no exception to the rule. While unlikely to ever climb into anyone's top 5, I hope, Laff Trakk is a nice supporting coaster that can be enjoyed by the whole family, as long as no one has any form of severe motion sickness or severe fear of clowns. Okay, from this point on, I have to warn you that we're entering controversial hot takes territory, the birthplace of potential internet flame wars for years to come. So if you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button to counteract all of the hate I might receive, and while you're there, hit the subscribe button for more opportunities to get mad at me in the future. I don't think any of my opinions are too extreme, but apparently I've been proven wrong before on that. So brace yourself, because here we go. At number 8, it's SooperDooperLooper, a 1977 Schwarzkopf looping coaster. Schwarzkopf loopers are the coaster community equivalent of old royalty nowadays, and it makes sense why. First off, we aren't exactly getting any more anytime soon, which gives them a historically vintage feel. Second, at their best, they're some of the most intense coasters in the whole world, with a positive G-heavy design that really isn't emulated anywhere else in the manufacturing industry right now. Modern appetites have shifted more towards airtime forward and speed-focused designs, leaving Schwarzkopf loopers, and Arrow loopers for that matter, all alone in their promise of extreme gravitational manipulation. SooperDooper, unfortunately, is not Schwarzkopf at their best, nor is it them at their most intense. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad ride. In fact, I'd say it's pretty darn enjoyable. It starts with a very strange non-drop into its first loop, which, as the name would imply, is a highlight of the ride. Then there's a tunnel. I'm a sucker for tunnels, followed by a very windy and bendy trip through the forest. SooperDooperLooper is almost like a terrain coaster, and although its layout leaves a bit to be desired, the way this coaster was designed is so unique and, dare I say, iconic, there's no way I could really place it any lower on this list. If you're into coaster history, the color orange, retro fonts, and have difficulty spelling, I'd give SooperDooperLooper a try. Moving on to number 7, it's Fahrenheit, an Intamin looping coaster. Okay, now this one, I admit, might make people mad. Fahrenheit is an inversion-filled, vertical lift hill sporting coaster that is first and foremost extremely photogenic and beautiful to behold. It has a great thrilling drop that is changed into a number of exciting and unique elements, including the rare Norwegian loop and a very pretty cobra roll. It's aggressive, it's quick-paced, and it doesn't shy away from its high-thrill approach. But taking all of that into account, I find Fahrenheit to be kinda uncomfortable and kinda boring. Which I know sounds paradoxical considering I just said it was a high-intensity ride. But for me, all of the elements kind of blend together into a meh experience. I think at its premiere, Fahrenheit was likely a big showstopper, what with its vertical lift and inversions, but nowadays those elements are a lot more common and don't automatically make a ride elite. It's not a particularly fast coaster that gets you with its speed, and I don't really find it that forceful either. And the restraints, I know these are supposed to be way more comfortable than they originally were, but I don't really count this as a tall person friendly ride. Fahrenheit is a fantastic supporting coaster, but to me, it's nothing more than that. A very pleasant diversion, but no greater than the sum of its parts. In the number 6 spot, we have Comet, a Philadelphia Toboggan Coaster's Woody. Comet has been operating since 1946 and quite recently was declared an American coaster enthusiast landmark. So this thing is the real deal. A ride on Comet is a ride on history, and to add to the appeal, it's a pretty dang good wooden coaster to boot. Depending on where you sit and how the coaster is running, it's possible to get anywhere from a kind of okay ride to a that was fantastic ride. So sometimes it just comes down to the luck of the draw. More times than not though, I've gotten a very enjoyable, smooth, and airtime-filled trip out, around, and through the park. It's hard to talk about this coaster without using the word classic, because I think its appeal really does boil down to that word, classic. This is a ride that exudes charm, and if you like wooden coasters and floater airtime, Comet is sure to fit the bill. Entering my top 5, it's number 5, Lightning Racer, a GCI dueling wooden coaster. Right off the bat, dueling coasters are cool. As a concept, any coaster that duels already has a great leg up on the competition. Lightning Racer not only duels consistently, I'm looking at you, Twisted Colossus, but both sides are standalone enjoyable rides. Lightning Racer is about 21 years old now, so like Wildcat, it's not the smoothest ride in the world. Unlike Wildcat, however, Lightning Racer has a very fast-paced and exciting layout that definitely makes the hurt worth it, with tons of great laterals and some very solid airtime moments throughout. The interaction between the two sides is also really fantastically done, with plenty of moments to cheer yourself on and boo your competition on your way to the finish line. Some people may say that this coaster is extremely rough, but I've never had a ride on it that didn't leave me smiling when I got off. And yeah, it duels, which is cool. And by the way, for what it's worth, I think Thunder is the best side, although Lightning is plenty fun as well. Lightning Racer is an awesome coaster that demands at least 2 rides on a visit to Hershey, which is enough to land it at number 5. On to number 4, it's Storm Runner, a 2004 Intamin accelerator. Some people have this ride ranked as high as their number 1 in the park, and in this case, I actually do see the appeal. Storm Runner is a speed demon with a top speed of 75 miles per hour and a hydraulic launch that goes from 0 to 72 in 2 seconds flat. And unlike some other accelerators, the rest of the layout outside the top hat is also incredibly entertaining. There's a cobra loop, a heartline roll, and a flying snake dive that, for my money, makes Storm Runner one of the best Intamin accelerators out there. The only real problem I have with Storm Runner comes down to the gimmicky nature of accelerator coasters themselves. Once you've ridden the fastest and experienced the tallest, the rest of the field just doesn't impress you as much as they maybe once did. Storm Runner helps alleviate some of this syndrome by having a killer post-launch layout, but still, I'm never going to take it over a Top Thrill Dragster or even a King to Ka for that matter. Fantastic ride, one of the absolute best in the park, but it just doesn't do it for me the same way its siblings can or other coasters at Hershey can. Still, it's incredibly deserving of riding again and again and again to fully experience this ferocious coaster. Coming in at number 3, it's a classic, Great Bear, a 1998 B&M inverted coaster. The fun thing about B&M inverts is how easy they are to compare to each other, and Great Bear stacks up very well against the competition. In most B&M inverts, I tend to prefer the back row for the extra intensity, but Great Bear is one of the few where the front row delivers the ultimate version of the ride. First off, it's incredibly scenic, diving down and across the lake and twisting in and out of trees and surrounding rides. Second, it's intense, delivering some of the most extreme forces you can find on a B&M invert, especially in old school ones like this. And third, it's unique. There really isn't another coaster, let alone invert, like Great Bear out there. This isn't just Batman the ride with a few modifications. This is a ride that you know is custom from the very start. Any ride that starts with a helix and then a drop and then a loop all within the first, 30 seconds? How is that just not a guaranteed winner? Great Bear for me perfectly encapsulates the feeling I get from a visit to Hershey Park. It's a little quirky, it's a little strange, a little old school, but it knows what it wants to be and it doesn't let up. And that's how it ends up in the number 3 spot. Okay, number 2, the second best coaster at all of Hershey Park, Candymonium, a 2020 B&M hypercoaster. Candymonium sits in the new Chocolate Town area of Hershey Park, and boy, does it stand out in a great way. The design staff really wanted to make this a marquee attraction with an in-your-face sign and a Kisses fountain that acts as a centerpiece of the whole attraction. And thankfully, the folks at B&M made sure to hold up their end of the bargain as well, because Candymonium is one hell of a hypercoaster. It's not my favorite hyper, I won't go that far, but it's definitely up there, probably in my top 3 and definitely in my top 5. Sure, some people will complain that the trim brakes are too obvious or that the coaster is overall too mild, but at the end of the day, the airtime on Candymonium is elite. Absolutely, undeniably, heart-stoppingly elite. Yes, your butt will entirely vacate your seat for over half of the ride duration, and you will have no choice but to smile and laugh at the ridiculous number of airtime moments throughout the layout. Is it a bit of a one-trick pony? Maybe. It's got a really great drop and some spectacular airtime and not much more beyond that. But if that sounds like something you would enjoy, then Candymonium is the coaster for you. And it is for me too. It's a sweet, sweet ride and the perfect number 2 coaster in Hershey Park's lineup. And finally, with only one coaster left, the number 1 coaster at Hershey Park is SkyRush, an Intamin wing coaster. Really, how could it not be SkyRush? SkyRush isn't just the best ride in the park, it's one of the best rides in the world. I understand why people have problems with it, I really do. I get that the restraints don't work for everyone. I get that it's too intense for some people, but at the end of the day, SkyRush stands as a monument to the hubris of humanity, in a good way. It's ridiculous how intense SkyRush is. It's the coaster equivalent of getting shot in the arm. SkyRush is the only coaster I've ever been on that made me feel like I was actually, potentially, going to die. Not because it was unsafe, not because my restraints came undone, not because I had just eaten 6 slices of pizza, but instead because of how otherworldly aggressive it is. The initial drop is unlike anything else I've ever experienced. You get thrown harder than a football out of Pat Mahomes' arm. And after that, it's just a relentless series of bank turns and ejector airtime moments powerful enough to separate your soul from your body. The fact that there are no inversions, no real floater airtime moments, and yet this still manages to be one of the top coasters of all time just shows how strong SkyRush is. Yes, it will crush your thighs, but it will also open your eyes to the true peak potential of violence in roller coaster form. SkyRush is the best ride at Hershey Park, and although it might not be the most marathonable coaster, it rightfully earns its spot at number 1, atop the Candy Mountain as king. And there you have it, every coaster at Hershey Park ranked. Did you agree? Did you disagree? What will I be criticized for this time? Feel free to let me know down below in the comments. And of course, if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. I've been Adam with Theme Park Blitz, and I'll see you in our next video.